You're listening to the RMPodcast, the official podcast of Red Moon Productions. Here are your hosts, Brandon Davidson, Keith Cheatham, and Sean Sebastian. Enjoy.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Red Moon Podcast. Coming to you live right here on Tuesday nights at 9 p.m. on Facebook, YouTube. You can like, share, subscribe to all of our social media accounts. Check for us on the YouTubes. We need your help. We love you guys. Thanks for tuning in. I'm one of your hosts, Brandon Davidson, alongside a normal new host,
Sean Sebastian.
And
Love
will guide us.
Dude Love will guide us.
Dude Love will guide us.
Huh.
He will guide us beyond the loss of Razor Raymond.
Speaking of wrestling, Raymond, you're an evil man.
I have to bring it up. Look,
we know he's not
we're
Raymond.
supposed to trust the journalists that are on the news.
You
and
think.
I get
Why?
that some people don't follow wrestling, that it's a niche topic.
But if you're reporting, you should at least make sure.
Exactly.
When I do my reviews, I Google how to pronounce names.
Especially.
I know I've butchered many, but I try not to.
Especially for the lost, the ones who have passed on.
Yeah.
Razor Ramon, Mr. Scott Hall passed away,
Mm-hmm.
as well as another notable, obviously a heavy hitter
in the film industry.
industry.
Yes.
I mean, obviously, I can't talk about just Razor Ramon.
No, absolutely.
He was a great actor. I mean,
Yes.
have you seen his performance in
That's
Ring?
right.
Just saying.
Hey, a lot of the
Razor's
WCW,
Edge. Ow!
Hey, look at him. There's a lot that went into Hollywood. Just saying.
I'm just saying, yes, William
He
Hurt
didn't, but
passed away
yeah,
at the age of 71.
He,
Very young age.
Cancer. Well, he's struggled with cancer since 2018.
So, I mean, obviously a huge loss. Just, again, another great loss for the year.
Sucks.
I mean,
I really do like William Hurt, so that one does.
You know what's
sting.
weird is the first performance that popped into my head of his when I saw his passing was The Village.
Oh, really?
I don't know why, but I think it was just because
that is
The
a
Village.
great movie, though.
I enjoy it.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people hate it.
A lot of people hate, yeah. But he did great. Well,
I thought he did fantastic.
William Hurt
at it.
always does great. I've not really seen something that I was just like, I didn't like him in that. Like, I mean, he's been in mediocre movies, but he's always been good even in the mediocre movies.
Yeah, I was going to say, even the bad films like The Hulk, The Incredible Hulk.
That wasn't
like
a bad movie, though.
I didn't like the movie, but I liked his character as the
liked
general in that movie.
Yes.
I think
Well,
he does a
he
great
plays-
job. And he's in the MCU.
The rest of the MCU,
Yeah,
he plays General Ross. A lot of people are upset for that, too, because in the comics, he becomes Red Hulk. And there was this idea that they were building towards that with reintroducing him. And it's like, but it's also one of those things where I don't, because there are people that are actually asking for him to be recast. And I'm like, he wasn't so big a character that I feel like Red Hulk's something necessary that you have to recast. I'm not against recasting a deceased actor for certain roles.
No, I mean,
it's
we're
one of those
already
things where
having
it's
to
like-
look at that with Chadwick Boseman.
Yeah, it's one of the things where it's like his character wasn't big enough that I think Marvel has plenty of time. Like, that's not something that they have to be like, oh, we need to hurry up and like figure this out. It's like he wasn't so integral to the MCU that
He was integral to Hollywood.
he was.
Yep.
He was.
Yep.
But no, a huge loss. One
AI.
unexpected, even with the struggling. I think he kind of kept it on the DL, just like Boseman did.
It was more known because
It was known, but I don't think it wasn't expected. I think his
No, it wasn't
passing as soon
expected, but
as
yeah,
he
he
did.
has because I mean, a lot of his work in some of the later MCU films were impacted by. They talked about like for the reason because they wrote that into the story too. In Black Widow, when she talks about his triple bypass, because he has the cane and he's real thin. That's because a lot of like his cancer treatment, and they wrote it in that the general had a
See, and that's what's
bypass, like
crazy
heart
because
attack or
which
whatever,
Chadwick
so I didn't know that.
Boseman's, he completely was quiet about it.
No, he was.
and
yeah,
you could see
apparently
in his
nobody
last
knew.
performance in Ma Rainey,
He was very thin.
he doesn't look sickly, but he's very thin.
Yeah.
And it came as quite a surprise when that happened. But when you saw Ma Rainey, you're like, okay. And I.
Well, I know some people had concerns that he was doing drugs because he had gotten so thin for a point where people were like, "Is Chadwick Boseman doing drugs?" And then you find out after the fact, it's like, "Oh, he was struggling with cancer." So
Yeah. But absolutely a huge loss for the film industry. Just like many of the losses this year, but also
Had a lot.
the losses in dignity with regard to the Oscars. We're going to talk about that even some more. Spielberg has spoken. He will be mentioned later on in the headlines.
A lot
when we
of
talk
people
about it.
have spoken about this.
Oh yeah, it's definitely driven a wedge between a lot of people in the industry. And again, we also have a topic that our good buddy Jacob had sent us in an email.
Yeah,
regarding the Oscars and one editorial about how they could possibly make a change that would be worthwhile.
How could you get people to tune in? Maybe if they did this, I have thoughts on that too. And
we're gonna talk about that in our headlines, and of course another loss. Sad to start the show off with so much loss, but the death of the Ukrainian filmmaker. Documentarian.
Well, I don't think he was Ukrainian. He was.
I'm sorry. He was doing a documentary in Ukraine.
He was in Ukraine doing a documentary.
In Ukraine?
In Ukraine.
Yeah, there you go. I thought he said in Ukraine.
No, I'm pretty sure I said Ukraine. I was just speaking fast. But yeah, because he is, I believe he's actually won. I know he's been nominated for a few of his documentaries at the Oscars, but I thought he had actually won one or two. So
he did.
Yeah. Okay.
Brent, I'm going to butcher his last name.
Man.
Renaud. I'm going to say Renaud. He's a foreign documentarian.
He didn't flee with the women and children. He stayed to do the documentary.
And I'm trying to look in the article.
Sorry.
Too soon.
Sorry, Sean Penn. Sorry. But I'm giving him props. He's
that's true. His bravery.
Yeah, he was a brave man, and I'm sad that he is gone. Yeah.
Well, I mean, Sean Penn's got to come home to America. He's
American journalist
fighting.
Was killed over there too.
Yes.
Yes.
I was going to say I don't have his name.
I don't know his name either, but I've been reading.
But no, all right. Done with the sad news. Obviously,
a lot of loss. The world's a crazy place right now.
It really is. Mm-hmm. It really is. And prayers go out to their families. And ultimately, yes, continue to keep the prayers and thoughts, good thoughts in your mind for everything going on in Ukraine and in the world today. It's crazy. So we hope to lighten the mood a little bit with our show each week. Yeah. Have a little bit of, lively debates and discussion, but also with some entertainment.
And our review is of a more lighthearted movie.
Very true.
We did another Daily Wire film.
We also did another beer. We haven't mentioned our beer.
We haven't mentioned that.
We're going to talk about that a little bit.
Anyways, the Daily Wire film.
That's really kind of
I was just like they've only had thrillers so far, so this one's not a thriller. Just like this beer doesn't exactly thrill me. It's not bad. It's not as bad as the Down South. We did get
light. It's called Low and Hazy.
Low and Hazy. Yeah, it's another one from the Appalachian.
It's all Appalachian IPA.
Yeah. And it's okay. It promises like mango and pineapple and something called stone fruit that we have no idea what that is.
It comes from the Middle East.
Email us and let us know what it is. We're probably just ignorant and we should know, but I don't know. But I don't really taste. I mean, there is a hint of some fruit in there, but it's not very flavorful.
No, you get a little bit of the mango on the front end, a little bit of the. I think
but you know
said the grapefruit on the side.
Yeah, there's the kind of the back sides.
You know what was vibrant and flavorful though? The movie we're going to
Wow, there's a segue. I love when he does that.
It was. And this is our review of the Hyperions. Quirky, retro, and offbeat, John McDonald's The Hyperions, a small indie flick, found a home with the Daily Wire. Having premiered last Thursday on their official YouTube page, with a mission to produce and distribute films that Hollywood simply doesn't or won't anymore, does Daily Wire's latest hold up? And does it set itself apart from the plethora of mundane releases we've seen from mainstream Hollywood this past year? Starring Carrie Elwes as Professor Ruckus Mandelbaum, a genius scientist and inventor of the Titan Badge. Badges designed to connect directly to a person's DNA, giving them superpowers. The film's story revolves around the Hyperions, a team of superpowered adolescents formed by Professor Mandelbaum, with the film's main plot focus on Vista, former Hyperion and adopted daughter of Professor Mandelbaum, played by Penelope Mitchell. Estranged from the professor for many years, Vista concocts a plan to rob the Hyperion's museum and reclaim her Titan badge, the thing that would give her powers back. Set in the 60s with plenty of retro 60s homages, The Hyperions is a story about family and reconciliation. Written and directed by John McDonald, a relative newcomer to the industry, with sequences paying homage to the wonderful world of Disney and set pieces and costuming reminiscent of both live-action and animated 60s superhero shows at the time, such as Batman, Ultraman, and Astro Boy, the Hyperions captures the aesthetic of the time, blended with modern themes and emotional plot points, and a bit of Wes Anderson thrown in as well. The film is definitely distinct and accomplishes much of what it sets out to do artistically, but isn't exactly in a class of its own either. Again, we have another film from Daily Wire that is unique compared to what we have been getting in Hollywood the last few years, but not so atypical in the grand scheme of film. While McDonald makes great use of the set pieces and animation to aid in his story, and the film is visually fun and entertaining, where it lands most is with its characters and story. Focusing on the broken nature of Professor Mendelbaum's team of Hyperions and how it correlates to them as a family as a whole, gives vibes of Pixar's The Incredibles, but much more messy in only the way real family problems can be. The movie's overall message strives to be a universal one, and succeeds in most ways. My biggest gripe is how cleanly certain plots and characters wrap up. While the biggest theme is forgiveness and reconciliation, the bulk of the movie highlights some real darker aspects of its characters that realistically would require more addressing. And while fixing character flaws isn't exactly the film's point, everything is easily swept under the rug come the character's time to reconcile. Ultimately, though, the Hyperions is highly entertaining. It's fun to watch and look at, and has plenty of homages and Easter eggs for fans of the time period to lock onto. Using the ridiculously simple aesthetic of 60s superhero design in a real-world setting with real-world problems offers plenty of humor, and the film is genuinely funny most of the time. With a few hiccups here and there, the film is really just in need of some polishing up and fine-tuning. It's a promising start for John McDonald, and hopefully he continues to grow artistically. I give the Hyperions 3 out of 4 stars.
3 out of 4 stars. These Daily Wire movies have a streak, but they can't just get over that.
They can't break through that. They're
barrier.
I like them. They're just not anything. Even this wasn't anything like way out. Like even though they tried to hype it up as being this solely unique thing.
Yeah.
It wasn't something to me that I hadn't really seen before. Again, I feel like it is something, which is the Daily Wire's goal. It is something that Hollywood's not doing right now because it doesn't fit the focus Hollywood wants.
Right.
So I agree with that, but it didn't blow me away in the sense that it's like, oh, this is so unique, or I've never seen something like this. I did love like the whole 60s, 70s aesthetic and the homages to that. I thought all that was really well done. You could tell there's attention to detail put into that stuff, and that's where it definitely excels. But overall, like it's family, even like the whole idea of this family message, I thought just didn't land as well as it could. Because
fell a little short.
For me, it's like, especially the professor, it's like, he obviously the movie paints him as being a terrible father, but it's like there are some questionable decisions he makes that I'm like, some of these things need to be addressed more than just, oh, we're sweeping this under the rug and we're one big happy family now. It's like, like don't get me wrong,
well,
family forgives each other. There's that reconciliation.
The premise though too, and I know I had to ask you actually before you recorded. Because I guess
you missed where they talked about he actually did adopt them.
Yeah. But even then, I was like, okay, well, even if he adopted them, it's like, are we supposed to be okay with him just experimenting with these kids, making them superheroes?
He pretty much did, exactly.
Like,
he adopted them for the sole purpose of using them as tools more so than them being his children.
And granted, while that could have made an overarching plot point that was resolved and kind of came full circle,
but
I didn't feel like the character development throughout. I mean, trust me, I agreed. I came down on the same side of the star rating as 3 out of 4. I was erring on 2.5, and I edged it out with 3 because I thought, ultimately, it's a movie that I feel like I actually will watch again because it had enough interesting aesthetic that I thought I could pull enough out of it the second time around or even a third time.
That's how I landed. For me, it was one of the Daily Wire movies out of the 3 that's released that I was like, I would be more willing to watch this one again than some of the others because it's just more fun. Like, I mean, it's not perfect, but it was to me more fun. So,
I mean, it's definitely a different theme than what the Daily Wire's been putting out so far.
Yeah.
The other films have been violent and they've
gritty.
Gritty, a lot of Second Amendment kind of messaging, a lot of different things. This one was very Wes Anderson. It was very, like I said, it didn't surprise me because I've seen his films.
Yeah.
So there wasn't anything about this that I hadn't seen before, other than I definitely dug the cheapness of the film.
Yes.
It is a good quality film. Like the acting is good, the story is there, the emotional moments, especially at the end, there's not enough there to make them that emotional for me.
I agree.
But the aesthetics and the props and stuff that were in the film, just how cheap and amateur and thrown together they look, it's definitely because it was a low budget film. But like you just said before the show, it's very intentional for it to look that way, and I just enjoyed it. I mean, the whole thing, it looked like a Power Rangers movie, like how they put the chip in their armbands and all that and it powers them up. Like, I thought that was great, but I never really felt like I got to see them use their powers.
True.
That
The
they
only
build you up to.
really
You don't
was-
even see the strongest man do
no.
anything.
Yeah.
They cut it
they
away,
cut it away
and then
from
show
it,
you the
and then they show you the
aftermath.
aftermath.
Something tells
yeah.
me that was the actor being, I guess, because maybe he's been in Cobra Kai, he gets paid a little bit more. It seemed like one of those instances where he couldn't fulfill. Or wait, are you talking
No,
about
the
I'm sorry, the
what's
character
his name?
in
The black guy. What's his name?
Ansel.
Ansel. Yeah, it never shows
I think
him
it was,
actually
it was
destroy
very
those
intentional
guys.
that they didn't show it.
Yeah, because it's violent.
Yeah.
But I mean,
But that's
it
funny 'cause
shows
the movie-
aftermath.
According to IMDb, me and Brandon are still trying to figure this
Yeah,
out. It's
it's
rated,
rated
R.
R.
And we're like, one, yeah, he does smoke, and apparently smoking brings the rating up
But
because
no
that's
more than
bad.
a PG-13.
And that's stupid, yeah. And then, of course, there is some blood splatter after, like, he's massacred those people. But I was like, nothing about the movie
It wasn't
felt worse.
enough.
I would say PG-13.
Yes,
There's
exactly.
no F-bombs in it that
No.
I remember. I don't
and
really,
even the violent aspects were done kind of in the vein
you never
of the
see
rest
it
of
happen.
the movie.
You
It's
see
kind
it
of cartoonish.
afterwards.
Yeah.
It's just people laying there with fake blood.
Yeah.
Like it's not that.
Even Jeremy Boring and Michael Knowles from Daily Wire had talked about how this movie was more family accessible than their other ones, which I would agree it's more so, not fully. I definitely don't think it's for younger kids.
Yeah.
But it's one of those
Teenagers,
things.
yeah.
But it's one of those things where I'm like, I was agreeing with them in the sense that it's like, yeah, this really isn't that
I think
bad.
that's why they
Yeah.
made the statement, was to kind of clarify, like, if anybody was questioning the R rating, it's
Yeah.
not like shut in.
It's not,
or
yeah,
run, hide,
run,
fight.
hide,
No.
yeah.
But ultimately, even bringing up the aesthetic, it's like, I agree. I thought there were just so many moments where, again, him doing it as an homage and a hats off, or even, like, I guess, trying to be akin to Wes Anderson to show his appreciation for Wes Anderson, or obviously his influence by Wes Anderson, and still blending so many different molds together. You can tell this is a person who loves, the craft of filmmaking and has taken those, ingredients and made his own. And absolutely, it stands that way. But overall, it just, like you even brought up with the emotional moments, and I felt this way even with some of because I think before the movie too, they were talking about how so much of even some of the props, the animation, were all done from the director. And
the
I
animation
felt like
was brilliant.
it
I'll
was
say that.
great. It was fantastic. But I think I told you too, Keith, before you recorded. For me, it seemed like on the level of which, again, I know directors. I can think of myself in certain situations of always wanting to get your vision across and get your vision on screen.
Just critiquing certain things. I mean,
And yeah, from my perspective, I was critiquing more so maybe times where he went a little too far, or maybe could have cut out some of the exposition that really didn't drive home what I was hoping. Like, I got the point long as the scene was going on, and then it was kind of like it kind of drug on a little bit too much. Some of the animation, I'm like, okay, obviously I know he spent a lot of time in the animation aspect, so he doesn't want to cut any of it, but some of it drug on a little bit too much.
Oh, yeah.
The explanation of how they got their power, I thought, okay, it was creative, but again, you've got to keep it interesting enough to keep me engaged the whole time, and it can't be, because I already know it's, using ingredients that I've seen before, you've got to mix it up enough to add your own flavor that it's not fully something I've seen before. And so I think it missed the mark to a degree in that, aspect, which is why I just knocked off the star rating. But again, I still ultimately
gave it 2.5.
Yeah, you only gave it
So,
2.5. That's where you settled.
Yeah. But there's plenty of films that are worth watching again that we've rated
2.5
at 2.5. And I
Absolutely.
I agree with your rating. That's I would say my half star definitely came off when it came to the ending of the film, and the wrap up of everything was I felt like it was
clean.
quick
Yeah.
and clean. Yeah, exactly. If all of these things transpired to build up to the reason for them breaking in, taking hostages, which obviously they didn't hurt anybody, so it's not like, but the reasoning for doing it, I understood, but I never really got the justification, and I never really got the again at the end when there's an amends that's made. I just did not feel that connection at all. I mean, I really enjoyed the ending scene where he carries her off the train.
Yes.
As she falls asleep on his shoulder. I loved that.
Yeah.
The scene before that where he's laying in the bed.
Yep.
I was just like, you're trying to make me cry, and I got nothing. There's
well,
nothing there.
I was gonna say I understood. Yeah, exactly.
They try to do like with they're speaking with their mind,
and
everything,
I
and that was
loved
done, yeah.
the essence of it, and I knew what he was going for.
But
Yeah.
you didn't have enough of a connection
Yes.
between the two of them for like I could have just them quietly staring at each other and you understanding they're mentally communicating would have been impactful if you had built up the rest of the emotion around the
And
relationship.
there is a pivotal scene in the middle of the film that showcases the motive, for why she's breaking in and trying to steal the badges, and that I think.
But even still, she broke the law and held people hostage. It's like, yes, she had a
Right.
reason for doing it, and maybe you might give her a lighter sentencing because of that. But at the end of the day,
Well,
she's still, you don't just like slap
Yeah.
on the wrist. It's fine.
Plus, there was
you just go ahead and go away.
Minor spoiler alert: the scene where, again, it was a nice, intense scene, but the payoff wasn't there because of what happened like 2 seconds later. She rescues the person she's doing all this for, and tells her to go into a stall.
Yeah,
and close her ears.
They build
and,
you up to think
and
she's
it's
about to
silence,
do something brutal.
and I'm
yeah.
sitting
Yeah.
here thinking, oh, this is intense.
She's gonna
But
make
then
him-
you see the very person who is supposed to get his comeuppance
in the back of the cop
in the back
car,
of a cop car being pulled off, and I'm like, well, then what was that scene?
what
even?
happened between?
The
what
only
happened?
purpose of having that scene was to try to fake viewers out and to make them think she was going to do something. But it's like, but then when you find out she doesn't, it's like,
She
okay,
did the right thing.
within
Yeah.
the context. It's like, yeah, you're trying to build up this suspense of what's she going to do. But then within the context of the film, it's like, but then makes no sense for her to tell that person to go into the stall.
Right.
It's
right.
like, yeah, you're doing this to build up tension for the audience, but it doesn't. It's
the
not
the
realistic
payoff's
in
not
the movie.
there.
Yeah.
I mean, even like I said, even if they had him carried out on like a gurney or something, and they were putting him in the back of an ambulance, and they said he's pretty banged up, but he'll live.
Yeah.
Something along those lines of like, okay, she took care of business.
Yeah.
Just something that was a little bit more of a reason why we got that scene.
It makes you, you're waiting for something to happen and it doesn't.
And that was,
yeah.
I don't know, that was the only thing that I felt like, there were definitely moments where once the action got started and the tension rose, I was interested to see how everything would wrap up. But early on in the film, I just felt like a little bit too heavy on exposition of what these badges are and then how this family came to be. And really the only power that we do see, which it's a good effect, it's done really well, but the one that we continue to see throughout the whole film is just the one who can vanish and change
Teleport or
teleport
whatever, yeah.
locations. And again, I like the effect that's done, but hers is really the only ones that we see to great effect. All the others are kind of lackluster and we don't see much of. And again, that could be a budgetary issue. And again, I know that's where you got to get creative as a filmmaker. And that's why I don't know. This movie is good enough for a second viewing, but I felt like it missed the mark just enough that I'm like, I couldn't award it, what I wanted to by the time I finished, watching it, because I just felt like it didn't hit well enough.
Yeah, I can't find, literally, I've been Googling since we started talking. I cannot find the budget for the film anywhere.
It's probably not.
There's actually, when
it doesn't
you
even have a
Google-
Wikipedia
yeah,
page.
When
yeah.
you Google
Yeah.
like the Hyperions budget, there's more articles about why Carrie Elwes is in a movie produced by the Daily Wire.
Well, they bought it.
I
after
know,
he already
I know,
made it,
but that's what the articles
That's
are
what they're
mostly.
that's what they're
why
mostly
is
concerned
this
about.
Hollywood movie star in a movie produced by a bunch of conservatives?
Well, of course.
And
and again,
I can't find anything about the budget. It's got an 89% Rotten Tomato score though from
Yeah.
audiences.
well, and that,
Yeah, it
and
doesn't,
honestly,
I don't think it has a critic score at all.
No, because we've seen again, and that's part of the reason why we've reviewed these movies, because ultimately that's been what the Daily Wire's message has been with creating their own entertainment.
I'm sorry,
It
it's
is,
82%. Sorry.
but they've been wanting to create culture.
They wanted to make movies that aren't necessarily political, but still share their moral values. But they don't beat you over the head with some political message. And our goal was to review them honestly and say, hey, are they actually making legitimate movies that are entertaining and not just these soapbox movies that Hollywood tends to make?
Right.
And so far, I would say they have. And I know people would say we're probably biased, but I would say no. I think these movies really are relatable for the most part for general audiences.
Well, here's the thing.
Despite whatever
even if
political
we're-
beliefs you have.
Even if you would say we're biased for viewing them, I would say that we're at least giving our honest opinion after viewing them, and that's far better than
If it
people
was a
who
bad
are not
movie,
viewing them
yes.
because of who it's produced by.
I was not I mean, Shut In was okay, but I wasn't a huge fan of that movie. I probably wouldn't catch that movie again unless my wife wanted to watch it.
See, I felt like the emotional
Run, Hide,
moments.
Fight, I thought did a better job of I don't know.
I actually like Shut In better
I thought
than
Run,
Run,
Hide,
Hide,
Fight was
Fight.
pretty
I
good.
did too.
But
I thought Shut In was better than
this is
than
my
Run, Hide,
favorite
Fight.
of the three, though. Honestly, and it's because it doesn't have. None of the movies really have an overtly political lean to them, but I do feel like the other movies definitely showcase stand your ground.
Yeah.
They showcase Second Amendment rights, and they showcase not vigilante justice, but the people are going to get what's coming to them. Like, I really feel like there's three main themes of both of those movies, and the Shut In did have a tiny little bit of a biblical or spiritual lean to it, which I agreed with, and I liked it. But this movie is the one out of the three so far that just feels like it has no attachments or agendas
and
at
it's
all.
funny
And
because
I like it
again,
because of
so
that.
many people knocking the Daily Wire for producing this film when really
Yeah.
it was already made.
Yeah, they bought it.
They tried to show it at the Venice Film Festival, and it actually got a lot of buzz, but nobody bought it.
Before,
and so
before
Daily Wire snatched it
Yeah,
up.
I was gonna say
Yeah.
before Daily Wire purchased it, it got good buzz at these film festivals, and then the moment they bought it, everybody's like, "Well,
No,
we're
away
wipe that
staying
off."
away
Right.
from that. Yeah,
but again, and I think that just proves the bigger point that they're trying to make, which is ultimately a lot of these movies, whether it's because somebody's going to complain that a conservative outlet bought it up and distributed it, or versus the fact that this movie would have been overlooked simply because it didn't push some of the woke ideologies or even some of just the tenets that Hollywood has been pushing over the last several years in a lot of their films. I mean, the simple fact of the matter is, like you said, Sean, none of these films have an overt political message. A lot of these, and I think I've joked around with Keith on several occasions where I've said, I see these movies that they've distributed so far, and almost all of them seem to have, in my mind, a recollection of, this would have been a movie that would have come out in the early to mid 2000s.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And they would have not raised or batted an eye as to what their message was because it would have been universal. So I think it says more so to the culture changing and how, yes, Daily Wire definitely has the initiative of pushing a counterculture, but it's more so because maybe we've gone too far in one direction and there's not enough to balance it out because Hollywood only seems to be involved in and obsessed with making a certain type of film.
Well, what I wonder is someday when the Daily Wire gets to the point where they're purchasing and producing, distributing films like Forrest Gump or Saving Private Ryan or these huge award-winning films, when they put a film out like that, are people going to diss the film because it was put out by the
No
Daily
doubt.
Wire?
I think we're seeing that now.
Even though it's a extremely good film.
Yeah.
Like right now I can understand, this is an amateur. I get it. It's their third movie. It's not this huge thing. But when the Daily Wire is putting out films that are actually up for awards or they're being
they'll never
shown
be
in
up for
theaters
awards 'cause they won't
or
consider
whatever,
them. Yeah.
because I think they have the potential to get to that point.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think they want to get to that point.
No doubt.
Like any production company.
Well, I think they would argue something a little different. I think they would argue that the validity that their films have is more so impactful in terms of the culture it sets and that precedent than being honored by Hollywood. Because I think what they would argue, and I think what we've argued many a times on this show, is the fact that only can the messages that is being forced and shoved down our throats over the last decade of film that we've ridiculed the Oscars for awarding.
Yeah.
Only can that go on for so long before you have the backlash with regard to look at the box office numbers. Literally, West Side Story was a pandemic failure. A week later, No Way Home comes out and demolishes everything. So there's no story there other than the one that's being created by this false narrative of, no, it wasn't the woke messaging from the film. It wasn't the lackluster nature of the actual filmmaking itself
or the
from a story
necessity
perspective.
of making a remake of a great film.
Of a
Like,
classic.
What do you need a remake? Yeah.
But it's like, at
People
the
are
end of the
tired of
day,
remakes.
why in the world would you continue to pedal and shovel that dribble down our throat when you have other ways and other avenues of having these and I think the same way in which a lot of YouTube stars use the platform and rose to a certain level to gain notoriety, not because they followed the mainstream message, but because they went the opposite way. And I think that's the battle that Daily Wire is waging.
People are finding alternative things to be entertained by. I mean, we've seen on Netflix a lot of these Asian movies that are getting popular. We've seen, like you said, with people turning to YouTube or turning to other platforms. It's like they're tired of the bull crap.
Right.
They just want something entertaining.
Yep.
So they watch.
Well, I think
you know,
Jeremy Bourne after they had like a little post-show interview with the producer from Bonfire Legend, and it's so funny because he said if anything, he's like, yes, this is what we're trying to do is push back, you know, and create an avenue and a lane for our culture, but so that it can be countercultural to spawn other things. You know, things that we've wanted to do, you know, the movies we want to produce and make here at Red Moon. But ultimately, I think it is what he said ultimately was, you know, we're having fun. You know, we are being ourselves. And if there's anything that I think elicits, you know, true response from not only creatives, but from audiences, it's when you're not trying to act like something that is unrealistic or that is fake. And I think we obviously have known well into the social media age how fake you can be on the internet and how there's some who can make a great success and there's tons of imitators behind it. But it's far be it from those imitators to ever gain the same success as the originals. And so, hey, I give them credit for trying. We'll continue to review their movies, and honestly, we're going to review them, you know, with the critical eye that we have for all movies.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're not going to show favoritism.
I'm not going to give them a pass.
And it's like we will judge them critically. I think most of the things we said about Hyperions, like we do a lot of times, were the negative stuff.
Yeah.
And yet it's still a great film. It's worth checking out. It's worth subscribing and watching.
Yep.
So absolutely go check out the Hyperions. Only available on the Daily Wire. You get
Or
support
screeners.
I don't want to see. Yeah, you could do that, but I at least want to say support the filmmaker.
Yeah.
I mean, especially when it comes to indie filmmaking.
Well, you got the ones that would refuse because of where it's from. You know, we
Well,
can't
not
support
me.
them.
I just don't have the money. So
You don't have the money for $10 a month for 1 month to subscribe?
I'd have to cancel Disney Plus or something.
What?
Yeah.
You can't do
I'd have to
that.
get rid
What?
of one to start another one.
Just for a month long to watch the movie and then
Oh,
cancel?
to just watch the movie and cancel.
That's what I mean.
Well, that's not support.
That is.
They still got your $10.
Yeah.
Yeah, they got my
Same
$10.
difference as paying $10 for a movie. Actually, movie
well,
tickets
hell,
are more. Yeah.
you could do that with Apple
that's
TV
why we have
Plus or
stubs.
Disney Plus. You could watch a whole season of Hawkeye after it's released and say, I only bought the subscription for that.
That's true. That's true. You got me there.
You
I just
could,
downloaded
but that's
it,
a
though.
lot of effort to have to go in and cancel things.
Well, and this
Just
is
let 'em
how the
keep
cultural
charging.
revolution starts. A bunch of people who say, I don't want to pay for nothing.
I don't care about the filmmakers. And you know who else doesn't care about filmmakers?
Here we go. I love it.
The Academy.
Oh, fantastic. Let's talk about some headlines.
Oh, by the way,
I'm
Yeah.
afraid of the dog jumping on me.
I know you don't want to jump too much.
no more watching my Plex.
Uh-oh.
You're banned from Plex.
I am?
What did
Yeah,
you
because
do?
if I can't
That's
download
fine.
a movie from the Daily Wire and watch it, then you don't need to be watching any of the movies.
Here's
on
the
my
thing.
Plex.
I never watch it because it's never up. I can't ever get it to work.
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
Same with Keats. I've never gotten Plex to work.
Gosh.
Man.
That sounds like a personal
how-
problem to me.
How many times have I come on here and said that I end up just renting it on Vudu anyway? And I pay the $20.
God.
So I'm paying enough for both of
All you
us.
have
know
to do
what
is
it
send us
is.
a text and be like, hey, man. It's like, okay, I'll stop downloading stuff so you can watch.
Okay, you all say that, but here's the thing.
Everybody in my family watches it except you. Nobody has. Brian next door has the same. He's in the same area and he watches it.
Well, the
just
thing
fine.
here's the thing. After most of the time, if I can get it to work, it'll either have latency issues or it is a moment of I don't want to text or bug anybody.
I caught him
just
watching
want to
mine the
watch
other
the
day.
movie.
I caught him.
It was Licorice Pizza.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I was
No
I
Way
was-
Home in 4K is on there
Here's
right
the
now.
thing. He actually got it to stream even though my VPN was on and I was doing stuff. And I noticed he
Yeah.
was watching and I was like, is that working for you? And he's like, yeah. It's like, because I turned it
Oh,
off
you
just so I
think
could
so,
watch
yeah.
it. He's like, well, now it stopped. It's like, yeah, that's because I rebooted.
If we got the VPN on, you ain't gonna
He got it, but he said
I
it was
was
like a
able
very
to.
low quality, and then
Yeah.
he said when I turned the VPN off, he was actually getting higher quality.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
We watched.
Somehow
we watched,
it was getting through there.
The Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2 off your Plex.
Oh yeah,
The other night. Over the last couple of
Now,
nights.
see, okay, there are certain films I'm okay with you because they don't deserve your money. And Spider-Man,
Oh.
Amazing Spider-Man 2 is one of those.
Yeah.
No, we have
Yeah.
to watch those in order to watch No Way Home.
Yeah.
Agreed. That's
Yeah,
fine.
You gotta watch them all in
So-
order.
Andrew Garfield was fun.
Yes, he was.
That was fun. The story around it, I even loved his
Yeah.
and was it Gwen's
Gwen, yeah.
relationship.
Yeah.
Which
were
it
the-
made sense because he was
Mark
the director
Webb,
of
500,
500 Days of
That was the
Summer.
only aspect of those movies I thought was well done. Was them.
their relationship.
Mm.
It's good. All right, let's talk about some headlines. Keith, you alluded to it there, right at the top, and it's
The Academy hates itself, and I mean I truly believe that.
Do they love anything?
No, they love money and power.
Well, they don't have that.
they
don't
do
even
it
have
instead, I
viewers.
guess.
They love notoriety, but only the notoriety.
Oh, sorry. See, it wasn't even worth talking about. It was like, let's just go to
We're
story
done.
time.
We're
Let's go
done.
straight to the segment.
I'm doing it for you, Sean. You can get home and
Okay,
play
so-
GTA.
That's right. There has been the Academy has tried to point the finger at ABC. They said, "Look, we didn't want to do this. ABC told us we had to cut 8 categories, and we managed to knock them down to 5 or how many it was."
Yeah.
And of course, it's like, yeah, you could point the fingers at ABC, but at the end of the day, your downward trend has been going on for over a decade. And at that point, ABC had no choice but to say, hey, do something or else we have no reason to carry you.
Well, we had an editorial that was sent to us that thinks they've got at least one of the ingredients for doing this.
Yeah.
And that happens to be an editorial from NPR.
Yeah.
We're going to link
all
it
you
in the
had to say.
description. Here's the thing. The person's a little bit bombastic.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I think
It's
they're obviously trying to be tongue in cheek and humorous throughout.
they are,
the
and
approach.
it is like an opinion piece. I mean,
It is, but they're specifically raising the idea that if so many of the best actor and actress nominations this year were eaten up by people who
You have, I think, like at least 3: Will Smith, Nicole Kidman, and Javier Bardem. Yeah, that are all based on actual real people.
Will Smith. Oh, you said
Yes,
Will
it
Smith.
was those 3 that I know of.
Oh, and did you say Jessica Chastain?
I
For
did not.
Tammy Faye?
So that's 4.
Yeah.
So you have 4. Yeah.
So basically, you have this instance of people who are depicting real life
Figures.
and I do think he's got a point in the sense of it can be biased in this because the first thing you're going to be able to do is immediately
Compare them with the real life person.
and
Yeah.
just like we did with Rami Malek in Bohemian Rhapsody,
Yeah.
who did a stellar job
Yep.
of performing as Freddie Mercury.
Well, we did it with like you look at Ashton Kutcher in
Steve Jobs was awful.
in that, and then of course, yeah, Michael Fassbender.
or I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Ashton Kutcher was in
Jobs.
He was in Jobs, and then you have Michael Fassbender in
Steve Jobs.
yeah.
Right.
And it's you have a lot of comparisons because obviously that's especially a more recent figure that you know, and it's like this guy's nothing like him.
Yeah.
I had some of those problems with that with other movies, and I do think his suggestion was acting categories like just like you have an adapted screenplay and original screenplay, have like an adapted acting because he argues that it's harder to portray a real life figure and requires a different set of skills, so therefore it should be recognized differently from
Well,
acting in a made-up
and that it
role.
would free up the categories
Yeah.
of best actor and
Yeah.
actress
for more people to be nominated solely on original work, and then you can nominate more people, and it would pull in audiences because people love to see like the adapted, like who's
Two things. I think he's got a point in one instance of an understanding that yes, original work versus the comparison of a real life person. However, there are years where you don't always have biographies.
Yep.
That you may only have one or two
Or enough good
performances
ones that you think
that it would be worth it.
Yeah.
because we've seen plenty of bad performances, but also you have this instance of he even brings this argument up in his article or his editorial about what do you do? Do you extend that to the supporting actor and actress? I mean,
He
in
argues
case,
that
it's
really
like-
don't even need actor or actress. It should all just be acting.
See, I know he
Yeah,
he
that's-
mentioned that he a couple of years ago made a gender neutral category, but again, I'm like, I think then and they said a lot of people fired back and gave him the.
But then you have the MTV Awards where they did make it gender neutral and they were praised because women should be considered just as good as men.
Here's the thing: you take away from the unique roles of both the genders.
Oh, I'm
and the
not
sexes.
arguing for
no,
it.
I know, but
Yeah.
he even said he got fired back from a lot of people who responded saying, but there's also instances where you're going to have maybe sometimes where men outweigh the women performers.
They said
and
if
then
you
they
do
get
that, then
overvoted.
it'll all be men voted on, and then the women will
Of
never
course
get
they're gonna
acting
come from that
categories.
angle,
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
Yep.
and I disagree with that to an extent too. But yeah, I just want
Because
to
I'm sure they would praise it if all women got nominated.
To me, yeah, obviously there are the years where you don't have a lot of performances based on real life people, but at the same time, at the end of the day, I do agree it takes a different set, like different types of skills, but it is all still acting. And if you're a phenomenal actor like Daniel Day-Lewis and Lincoln, you can do, made up roles and Lincoln, and it's like, I mean, just because he's good at both.
Saying though that like The Darkest Hour, so that he's saying that
Gary Oldman.
Gary Oldman. I always say Oldham. Gary Oldman would not have gotten Best Actor for that film. He
should have got
would have only
adapted,
got
like
best
an adapted
biopic
acting.
or
Well,
whatever.
he also
however.
said too in that performance he might have been helped too by the amazing prosthetic work from the makeup, who also won that year for best makeup.
Yeah.
But ultimately, because sometimes maybe the illusion of the character is propped up by other external circumstances that warrant favoritism towards that actor, and I honestly
That's
do
all
think.
of them. I mean, even in Spencer, Kristen Stewart had to have tons of makeup and a wig and everything to play
but again,
Diana.
But again, I think Princess Diana more so. You see Kristen Stewart's face in that.
Yeah.
You don't see Gary Oldman in The Darkest
yeah,
Hour.
that's true.
And I do think
You see a fat suit.
See a
Yeah.
fat
yeah,
suit,
and while I do think he did a phenomenal job, I absolutely think part of it him portraying that role and me being convinced by it as an audience
Is the-
member
is the
was
makeup.
the
Okay.
makeup and the whole atmosphere.
Colin Farrell as the penguin.
Penguin.
And granted,
Yeah.
he did a great job, but I mean, a part of that is also like the amazing makeup work.
Yeah. So
And-
say the same thing about Heath Ledger, though.
Yeah.
You can't see HeathLedger's face
No.
in all of that, in the
No.
scars and the
But
and
again,
the
he did a
clown makeup.
phenomenal acting job. So, and I do think it should be based on their skill as an actor, regardless of whether it's an adapted or original.
Agreed.
Because either way, you still have to bring something to it. And you could argue, and I'm not saying this is my argument, but I think you could also argue it's like, well, original is harder because then you have to create the whole persona yourself and create a character.
Yep.
Whereas an adapted one,
You
well,
have something to go
yeah,
off
you
of.
know how they behaved, so you just have to mimic that.
Yeah, in most cases, they're able to go and meet with the people and sit down and talk to them, unless it's someone like The Darkest Hour with Churchill.
Yeah, someone
I mean,
that's
yeah,
deceased.
somebody
But
that's
yeah,
dead.
so I
but-
think arguments can be made either way, but I just at the end of the day, it's like segmenting already existing categories into broader categories isn't to me the answer. And at that point, it's like, how many times do you split? It's like, well, acting in this type of role is different than this, so we need to split that.
Right.
Or just like they just merged sound not that long ago. It's like there's all kinds of categories, like even like set production. It's like, well, now we should split it into lighting and then set design and split it into. It's like you could split all the categories into different things, but at what point
Right.
does it become?
yeah.
Well, I was going to say too broken up.
Yeah.
and it becomes too. I mean, again, if anything, you could make the argument he's trying to make by just saying instead of trying to separate it in two distinct categories, do the same thing that you did with Best Picture. Just open the category up instead of 5 nominees, make it 10. I mean, if you're going to do that, and it's
Yeah.
like, then you at least have the ability to have other actors and actresses. Because here's the thing. Again, I feel like this is such a nuanced argument and so particular because there's going to be years undoubtedly that we don't have biopic picks. So why the hell should
then
we
you run
have
into
a
the-
specific category for
I say
it?
then you run into the Golden Globes problem where you have best drama, best comedy, and you have random or music and comedy, and you have weird movies in that segment because they need to fill the music and comedy segment. Where
Right.
none of them are actual musicals or comedies.
And and I will say he brings up that point specifically at the end of the article about how this is not going to fix the problem of overarching stigmas that we've seen throughout, Oscar history forever, which is that gritty dramas tend to almost always get the spotlight over the comedy films that we've seen that have been ingenious and ultimately are a lot harder to pull off sometimes than the drama films. And this kind of goes along to the first point I think you were bringing up, which was, now we have another heavy hitter, Spielberg, mentioning about how he doesn't think this was the right move for the Academy to pull this, of recording certain awards being, filmed and
he
then
does
just
say
broadcast
the whole
during
thing
the
is
show.
a collaborative, work. Like,
Exactly.
it's not just, it's not just the director who does it. It's not. He mentioned specifically some of the movies he worked on, like Jaws. He's like, without John Williams or without, the person who designed. I don't have to pull up the actual.
Wow,
quote.
who did the theme?
He said, like, when I look back and I think about without John Williams, Jaws would wear dentures. With West Side Story, when Tony is singing Tonight with Maria, without production designer Adam Stockhausen, he would be singing it on a stepladder, and she would be on the scaffolding. He said, all of this on an empty soundstage. He said, without film editing, all my movies would still be in the dailies. And he has a point. It's like, yeah, you're the director, you're the main actors, you're the faces of these movies, and that's who everybody recognizes. But they can't get it done without everybody else working with them.
But again, this is coming from Spielberg, a filmmaker, a seasoned filmmaker. It just shows you that the Academy, when they're making these decisions, they're not necessarily going to the filmmakers for their input. Otherwise, they would be shot down immediately by people like Steven Spielberg. They must not really care about what the filmmakers think.
I think that's what a lot of people are arguing. I don't know how much that holds weight in terms of, I feel like Hollywood does this really good job of, I mean, they're in the business of showbiz.
Yeah.
It's the easiest, freaking, you're paid to lie. I mean, it's like, I'm going to get up there on my soapbox and spout off this, but behind the camera, I'm going to be like, I'm going to vote with the status quo.
Yeah.
And I think that's the bigger problem is, again, when you cultivate a culture of just going along, it's hard to be the new age radical shift and move have a certain movement that ultimately doesn't change because, again, you have a bunch of stiffs that aren't willing, but you also have a bunch of new age folk that are only wanting to push it one certain kind of way.
But I do think that's also why you see the finger pointing, like, oh, ABC did it, because it's like they want to be like, it's not on us.
Right.
It's like we're with the filmmakers, we understand, but them evil guys over there said we had to do this.
Well, and I think to go back to your point too, Keith, of talking about how you start breaking up the categories into such minutia. It's like, I think that's kind of why you have the categories listed the way they are. It's because, yes, you do have your Spielbergs, you do have, your Pete Doctors, you're in, I mean, Pixar almost always takes home an Oscar for Best Animated Feature.
Once upon a
but
time,
yet,
they deserved to.
Yeah, true. But we almost always have them get up there, and we know by virtue of the fact alone that there's hundreds of animators that work on these films. And now, of course, in the bigger productions and the big blockbusters. And I liked what Steven Spielberg said, and another quote in the article we'll have linked below, is about how, everybody, there is no above the line and below the line.
Oh, yeah.
We're all equal at the Oscars. You're all competing. Yeah, go ahead, read it if you've got it pulled up.
I feel that at the Academy Awards, there is no above the line, there is no below the line. All of us are on the same line, bringing the best of us to tell the best stories we possibly can. And that means, for me, we should all have a seat at the supper table together live at 5.
Yes, and to
He was
echo,
being witty.
that's Spielberg.
Live
But
at
to
5.
echo the same sentiment, I think it is about saying there are times where, yes, two people from a given category are going to come up and accept the Oscar, but there's almost always dozens or hundreds of people behind those two or that one that are in that department for who making that film. I mean, look at any film credit.
Yeah.
And the film credits are filled with people who are never going to be mentioned, but if they worked on an Oscar-winning film, you better believe that's going to be on their resume to say, hey, I have some clout here, and I deserve to go above and beyond.
I say when look at Best Picture winner when they give that award out, the stage is always flooded with all, and yes, only one or two people talk, but it's always
the
flooded with
producers
all-
are
yeah.
always the one that
Yeah.
accept
Yeah.
the award, but that's usually the one where most of the cast
Yes.
and a lot more of the crew, or at least the ones who are on the bottom half, not up in the balcony,
Yeah.
come down and get to accept that award because it is like saying we get to share this
It was
with
a
everybody.
Group effort. Group effort. Wow, group effort.
Roger Ebert, you were just thinking of him.
Roger.
But no, I just ultimately I hope for the sake of trying to restore some semblance of honor into filmmaking that the Oscars will tank this year.
Yeah.
To the degree that they end up kind of going back to the drawing board. If they have to do what the Golden Globes did and eat their own and say, well, next year it's going to be an Instagram live event.
As sad
I mean,
as it
so be
is,
it.
because I really did used to look forward to the Oscars and loved watching them. I'm in the same boat. I just would like to see them get canceled at this point, because maybe that will teach them humility and make them change. I mean, I doubt it at this point,
And ultimately,
I doubt they'll change,
Yeah.
but I actually have no doubt that it'll be canceled.
Oh,
I don't
yeah,
know,
yeah.
I don't know if necessarily
I don't know if
after
it'll
this
teach
year,
them any humility,
but
yeah.
I do think that this is the direction they've been heading
People
for
they don't
over
care
a decade.
anymore.
well, and I think that goes back to what we were just talking about with the Daily Wire and the Hyperions, and again, when you have a certain kind of attitude and this elitism about how you approach these matters, that you think you somehow know better than the populace, again, at what point does the award become irrelevant when you're awarding things that nobody cares about?
Yeah.
And
It's just
like
them patting each other on the back.
Yeah.
But it's like, but without the people paying to see your movies, you couldn't afford to make any of these dumb things that you're awarding yourselves
or
for.
that you're pushing to try to push whatever agenda you have. And that's what I think we've seen too much of in the last few years with the Oscars, and unfortunately it's catching up to them. Or I should say fortunately it's catching up to them. So if they are driven into irrelevance, it's only by their own doing. Alrighty guys, we have one more headline, but we're going to save that for another time. We're going to push that off down the road.
We have a nice little on our if you check out our Facebook page, you can comment. There's a link to the article in there. Feel free to comment on that and share your thoughts with it, because it is the Turning Red having the
review poll.
There was a review pulled because the filmmakers didn't like it, so then Cinema Blend said, "Okay, well, we agree with you. We messed up on that one. We have some
little bit of cancel culture.
That's a little And granted,
we have enough of it in today's
Cinema
world,
Blend,
but
who produced the article, did it themselves, but still, I think that's wrong.
They were
That's just my
pressured to
opinion
pull
on
it because it was a negative view.
They said they didn't
review of
edit
a
it
film.
properly, and they'll hand the review to someone else, which is BS.
Somebody that'll write it the way they want.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Pretty much. And that's all you got to do now.
Yeah.
Just bully your way into.
I saw 10 minutes of it. I turned it off.
I've decided to watch it, and I didn't care for it.
What movie are we talking
Well, I
about?
said Turning Red.
Oh, dang it! I was gonna say go to our Facebook page
Yeah.
and find out.
We
I didn't know you
already
said
mentioned it. Yeah. Yeah.
Alrighty, guys. Well, let's move on. You already saw it open there, but let's finally move on to our story time.
It's story time, where the podcast members tell their stories.
Story time.
Story time.
Let's talk about a time
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
that movie would have been Jaws with dentures.
Yeah.
Been nothing.
Yeah.
Without John Williams.
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not gonna take this anymore!
That's right. Get mad. You know what that's from? Oh, it's from. Never mind. I was gonna say something.
What were you gonna say?
It's network, but I was gonna say I always got network and broadcast news confused.
Yeah.
But broadcast news has William Hurt in it.
Yes.
So I was gonna bring that up, but that's from network, so not the same movie. Alrighty, let's talk about
Can't handle the truth!
That's from A Few Good
You
Men.
good man.
a time when you didn't study for a test, and you could have passed or failed, but a time when you didn't study, one that just sticks out in your mind.
I don't have any that specifically stick out in my mind.
All of them is what you said before the show.
Yeah, I did. That's what I said. Most of them. I didn't study a lot. I just retained knowledge. So I was yeah.
wow. Yeah.
I'll be honest. So I did
Yeah.
pass most of my tests. I mean, I'm not saying every single one.
Got an idiot savant over here.
No, I mean, I
You just
was.
got the idiot over
I'm,
here.
I'm a good test taker. I do well on tests. So I mean
Under
that's
pressure.
never
Good under
been
pressure.
a big problem of
I'm
mine.
a terrible test taker.
My problem is just laziness. So when I get bored, I'm like, I'm just not going to do this. So like all of my passing, a lot of my classes in high school came from the fact that I did test well, because I
Yeah.
was like, I'm not doing this homework. I'm going to go do this instead.
Yeah.
And then my parents would beat me when I brought the report report. I'm like, I'm passing. It's yeah.
It's
They-
true. There,
what
I
did they
saw
beat
I
you
saw
with?
bruises on him.
Yeah.
One time.
Yeah.
They
So,
hated him.
Yeah.
If
So
it was
yeah, I
multiple
just
choice, I'd pass it.
I had a few teachers that were fond of me that hated that aspect of me because they knew like I was intelligent. But
You
I
wasted
just,
your potential.
I did.
Investigation.
Oh god.
This whole investigation is about as sufficient as a submarine with screen doors.
Are you not entertained?
Name that movie.
We keep going. I'll end up using all of them. This
Well,
is a show.
all of your quotes are from the same movie.
Which
Yeah.
is?
Silver
Well, that
Bullet.
one's
That's
Silver
it.
Bullet,
That's
but
right.
I mean, he has a couple movies, but he only uses like 2 or 3 quotes. So
I told you time and time again you can't bet managers.
Moneyball, yeah, that one comes about too.
What? That's not Moneyball.
That's Silver Bullet.
That's Silver Bullet.
That one is. No, you do have one from. I thought there was one from
What's
Moneyball.
the one
you
from
did.
Moneyball?
I don't.
I don't know.
I
thought
love
he
that
did one
movie.
for- yeah.
Maybe I'll remember it. I don't. I'm
remember
not
it.
right now.
That's
But that was
that's a
Silver
slow
Bullet,
movie.
yeah.
that I can
Moneyball's
watch.
great.
I can watch
Yeah.
that over and over again.
That's
a good movie.
yes. That's a great. It's weird. It doesn't feel like an Aaron Sorkin film, even though he wrote it, and Brad Pitt's great in it.
Oh yeah.
I love his acting in it.
Aaron Sorkin did Being the Ricardos, and I liked it.
Yeah, I think his script writing is what made me enjoy Steve Jobs so much, even though
It was
it was all right.
Yeah,
but I like
it
the
was,
writing in it.
He-
But anyways,
yeah.
a test that
Anyways.
all mine were college mostly.
Yeah.
I think I actually did well in high school. I studied quite a
in
bit.
college.
I was gonna say
I
you
did do
kind of
that.
had to. You were
Yeah, that was medical stuff.
Yeah.
I was like, it was only high
I didn't
school. I
study
didn't.
at all.
It was only high school. I didn't.
That's why
study.
you're not a surgery tech right now.
Yeah, I was
Actually, I
gonna
passed. I have a degree.
Hey.
Yeah.
Hey, that's all
I
that
work
matters.
for. I
Put
work
that
for a
on your wall,
I
buddy.
say I work for a medical company, so it's
That's
yeah.
right. Yeah.
I won't say which one because you know.
HIPAA.
Yeah, we'll go with HIPAA.
Yeah.
But no,
this guy didn't
yeah,
study.
college. There were times where it's like you'd be cramming for a midterm or a final, and there were tons of times where I would stay up late, thinking I was going to cram for this, and I would be on the bed with a
Procrastination.
book,
Yep.
and I would just fall asleep. I'd wake up and I'd be like, "Well, I guess I'm going to wing this thing."
Yeah.
And I do want to say one that I specifically can remember. I took race in the U.S. my sophomore year in college, and I did not buy one textbook for that class. I did not study once. I made a B in that class.
Good job.
And I think it's pretty easy to tell why I made a B in that class.
White privilege.
That's right. That's right. It was everything against the white man. You put it on there,
See,
you win.
What year was that?
Oh, that was
Yes, white privilege didn't exist back then.
10. That was 2010.
Oh yeah, it did.
09 or 2010
Nah,
is
it
when I
wasn't
took
even
that
a thing
course.
back then.
Yeah, it
Nobody even
was.
put those two words together
Obama
back
was
then.
president. It existed back then.
I don't believe it.
Privilege has always been a thing, but yeah, white privilege. I think
No, I
would
said those
last-
two words put
yeah.
together.
Yeah.
That's in the last 4 years.
I think. Well, I would say it was probably in existence on college campuses then.
True.
It didn't
True.
become like part of the
Yeah.
vernacular.
I never
of-
experienced
Right.
that environment, so
It didn't
the
become
college-
a
I mean, I've
modern
never experienced
term.
white privilege
Yeah.
either, but
what?
I said I've never experienced white
Never
privilege either.
experienced that
But
either? No, of course
I've
not.
experienced privilege because I live in America.
That's right.
That's right. What about you, Sean? Anytime you took a test?
Oh yeah,
or
no, I
didn't study?
never studied.
yeah,
Oh,
No.
never.
No,
just
never.
blanket, never.
Blanket never.
yeah.
No.
Did you
Sean
do
knows
well?
the way.
Now I will say, the only class that I actually gave time to homework and studying was U.S. history. I loved
Actually,
it.
yeah, I
But
did
that
really
was
well
the
in
only
history.
one that interested me. You know, they talked about evolution in my science classes. I zoned out. I was like, this crap ain't real. I believe in the Bible. I don't believe in evolution.
You can
So-
still believe in the Bible and evolution.
No, you can't.
Yes, you can.
You can't.
That'll be a debate for another time. We'll bring Ken Ham on,
Yeah.
and we'll bring Dawkins
Nye.
isn't. He's not. Oh gosh. Yeah,
they,
Bill Nye.
They did that one already.
I can.
I
Shoot
know,
it.
it's
can
on YouTube.
Shoot it down with one statement, one question I could ask you.
Okay.
When did the dinosaurs die?
Why does it matter?
It does,
Why?
because it matters when death existed.
Okay, and here's the thing. No, it doesn't.
Yeah, yeah. If death didn't exist until sin entered the world, that happened
For
with
human
Adam and Eve.
nature.
No.
Humans
For-
were over the animals.
right, but
Why does the
even
death of an animal matter for
nothing
humans?
died in the garden?
I don't know about that.
No, everything lived forever. Everything was sustained by God.
And even then, who's to say
So
that?
I'm just saying, sin didn't enter the world until Adam and Eve ate from the fruit. There was no death before the fruit was eaten. So dinosaurs couldn't have died before mankind. They had to have died once death entered the
I
world.
think it's
65 million years. You just
I'm
can't.
gonna look into.
You can't do that.
That's a good point, but I'm gonna look into it.
Well, I think it's an
I'm not gonna argue against it because I want to. I'm not
study
gonna,
up. But here's the thing.
I'm not gonna try to argue for a point.
Yeah,
that
this
I'm not
is gonna
fully
go into
fleshed
a whole
out. Yeah.
nother-
No,
yeah.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Death didn't exist until sin entered the world.
But I think a lot of people too, because I know this kind of goes against the whole old Earth versus young Earth.
Sure.
And I think it's interesting because you could also say, just like how the Earth was created in 7 days, and it's like, but we don't know how could time have existed before a sun in terms of the way we know time.
Dennis Prager actually has a really good about the translation of the original text and it being like ages, like meant like day as in ages.
Yeah,
so it's like it's
that's-
possible. And I mean that he wasn't promoting either or. He was
Right.
just saying that for some people it's like obviously if you think
I'm
in
just
terms
thinking,
of ages,
there's-
like
I
in
think
the
there's
first, on the
things that
first
are-
age
right.
and the second
I
age.
guess my
Sure,
only
there's
thing
no
is,
time where God
Yeah.
exists.
without
but-
being a biblical scholar or having, I would say you don't have to be a biblical scholar without having
this took a
studied up.
different turn.
It did,
I'm
sure.
enjoying
It
it
did.
though. I am enjoying it.
But without having studied up on it,
me, Small.
I would say
My goal is to use all of them now.
No, don't. Some of
I
them
lost
suck.
my train of thought.
Go ahead.
Gosh, no, I'm losing it. I don't remember now.
It's okay. We don't have to
But-
get into it.
It's like I do think that while again these are secondary issues. I don't
Sure,
think
it's not a salvation issue at all.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
But I do think it's interesting that when you get into a very literalist perspective, you can't be literal with God, because God is outside of time and space as we know it. So sometimes you can take supernatural instances and say that God could have explained it through something like evolution without us understanding how evolution started or existed before we knew it, or before the examples that we have today that may point to it.
If evolution existed, it would still be evolving.
But
They
wouldn't just stop.
argue we are, yeah.
Yeah.
We
But
argue
monkeys
we are.
aren't turning into people.
But I don't think that's evolution. That's not the basis of Charles Darwin. Even Charles Darwin circled back around and said that evolution wasn't about monkeys evolving into people. It was about things change over time and adaptation.
Adaptation is, I do believe in it.
and
in
adaptation is,
Like the
I think,
finches
something.
with their
yeah.
beaks. I know
Right.
about that one.
Sure.
And so I think subtle things change over time, but that's a
The amount of time is the issue for me. I believe if you put, I mean, human beings are a perfect example. You put humans in space, our muscles atrophy, we adapt to space. That happens in days after being on the International Space Station. It doesn't happen after thousands or millions of years. It happens literally in days.
right, but that's one
So-
instance of something that happens to us physically
Sure.
in this moment.
But I think there's things that prove that the things that look like they can take a long amount of time can also happen in a short
true.
amount
And
of
here's
time.
the thing: I wouldn't argue.
I'm going to go home and study about it.
That's good. No,
Yeah,
that's
good.
good.
Look at,
the
look
only
at Mount
time in my
St.
life I
Helens.
There's nothing wrong
Like,
with that.
Mount St. Helens erupted. It created a canyon about an eighth of the size of the Grand Canyon, but it created it in 4 hours. So to say the Grand Canyon itself is
No,
millions
here's
and
the thing.
millions of years old,
Again,
no, it was
and with-
created in a flood.
And I think that ultimately, any science that's worth its weight in what it's trying to prove is just trying to come up with evidence to prove the existence of what we already know to be fact. It doesn't necessarily mean that you can't say that something like Grand Canyon could have taken thousands of years to form, or it could have been an instance like a Mount St. Helens. And I think any scientist who's worth their weight in what they would argue would say, I'm going to look for whatever evidence is relevant and present. I think anybody who tries to state science as a certifiable fact that either proves or disproves the Bible is looking at it the wrong way. Because I
No,
think
right.
we
I
have a
think-
lot of naysayers. I mean, if anything, I think the
science-
natural sciences in and of itself, and especially the forefathers and the ones who created or came or presented the laws in which physics are based on,
a lot of-
come from those who had faith
I
in
say
God.
a lot
and
of
tried to prove
scientific
existence.
discoveries came originally from the church that was trying to prove, that their
The existence
doctrine
of
was
God, yeah.
existence of
I
God.
think science affirms the Bible.
Oh no, absolutely.
And I think the Bible is
100%.
literal truth. I mean, otherwise,
But
there-
literal
in
truth doesn't mean literal.
In the New Testament, Jesus says a day to God is like 1,000 years to man. Does that mean that 7 days was only 7,000 years?
Possibly.
It
No,
could be.
it doesn't. It just means that God and
could have been
time
10,000.
I don't know.
That's exactly, and that's like again, and going back to like,
But we don't know.
it's
that
not an apples or
we
oranges
don't
comparison.
know.
God's
Yeah.
outside of time.
We don't
He does
know
not
that it
view
was
time the same
millions
way
of
we
years
do.
either.
Yeah.
There's no
So-
viewable evidence of that.
I like this story time better
So-
than our original.
I know
one.
this,
I'll be honest
this
with
turned
you.
out to be really
I'm just
good.
like
better.
10 years ago, they found soft tissue of a dinosaur, and
Yeah.
there's physically, it's impossible for soft tissue to exist over 65 millions of years. Impossible. Even evolutionists say, no. We have to find a way to explain this soft tissue, this actually smushy,
But again-
pliable tissue.
But
So
again,
it's like,
okay,
but that's because of where their starting point is. They
Right.
firmly believe that everything is millions and billions of years old, so therefore there's no possible way this soft tissue could exist.
But I think no.
So
I
they have to
think-
try to
no,
find a way
I-
to
I
make it
think
work.
That's an argument though too that you're forcing upon someone who's just being skeptical. The same way any physicist or a biologist would say, based on the evidence that we know to be true, doesn't mean that there aren't external circumstances that can happen
yeah.
in the extraordinary.
yeah.
But it ultimately comes back to, okay, this is something that is a new discovery. We shall discover it and figure it out. It doesn't mean that it's going to lead again to the existence or even the to me, it does lead to the existence of God, because ultimately I think we're finite creatures who can only comprehend so much,
Yeah,
and that
that's
we'll
true,
never
yeah.
know the true existence of God until we meet him in the flesh or in the afterlife.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I don't think that one argument versus the other is necessarily to try to. I think any kind of argument to try to further prove how God is so magnificent ultimately becomes the glaring issue at present. It's saying, okay, even if I can comprehend this and find the genesis of this one thing I'm trying to prove, there then becomes another problem that has to be solved. And there's an endless amounts of, okay, well, even though you've explained, I mean, that comes all the way down to particle physics and the fact that you can get down to a Planck length, which is the smallest known particle in the universe. And it's like, okay, but what created the Planck length? Why? I mean, something so small. It's like that didn't just arrive out of nowhere. I mean,
Right.
even the
No,
people who
yeah.
believe in the Big Bang, it's like, but there still had to be something that
Something
initiated
created
the Big Bang.
Right.
Or the particles therein that lie therein with the Big Bang. So it's like
understand.
I can perfectly see people who argue on behalf of the Big Bang, and they may argue from an atheistic or agnostic perspective.
Sure.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that they've proved the non-existence of God. I think quite the opposite.
No,
I think
just-
it
I
reveals the magnificence and the
if you don't
preponderance of
take
of
him
God.
at his word, then I feel like you take the magnificence away. If God can't create the earth in 7 24-hour days, then he's not
See,
God.
I think you're putting God in a box at that point.
No, I'm actually giving
because
him
you
all
now
the credit.
you are now saying, because here's the thing, I don't think questioning it's the Bible is a framework, and absolutely it is the inherent truth, but that doesn't mean that there aren't external things that can then prove the Bible's existence to be true outside of the Bible. I don't think you have to then just go directly to the Bible and say, well, it doesn't say it in there, and if it doesn't say it in there, well, then it's not true, because there's a lot of things that aren't in the Bible.
No. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that if he says he created in 7 days, then
You mean
he
it's a
created it in
literal
7
7 days?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Jesus
I mean, that's
believed
one
it.
perspective.
Jesus believed it. So I mean, if he told it and taught it to everybody, then why wouldn't I believe it?
What do you mean Jesus sat down and
Jesus
said that?
quotes from the Old Testament and says, when God created this on the 6th day, like, I mean, he doesn't say on the 6th age or on the 6th millionth
But again,
year.
you're looking at a
you're-
translation that is
yes,
that
that's coming
yeah.
from Hebrew.
So we'd have to
old
look at the
Hebrew.
So do you
original
think our
text.
translation of the Bible is inaccurate and then therefore it's
no,
not the
I'm,
truth?
No, no, you're conflating translation with truth. I'm
well,
saying
if
that the
it's-
truth is in the words itself, and it's speaking through Christ. It's not inherent in the fact that word for word the Bible is infallible. I think the message and the meaning of the word is infallible. But that doesn't mean that we as humans can't be infallible in how it was translated
how
or
we
wrote.
interpret it,
Because
yeah.
there's a lot of translations that I wouldn't hold a candle to the original text. I think you have to first go back to the original text and know Hebrew.
Yeah, the
because that is the way in
NASB
which
is
God
the
breathed it out.
Is the most accurate translation of the Bible. I mean, there's several. I mean, if we're going down to translations, then they're all wrong.
Well, no.
They would all get some things wrong, but we weren't there. But I mean, I'm just saying, Hebrews know how to speak Hebrew, and they know how to translate it into English.
But they didn't translate it into English. I mean, hell, Luther translated it into German from the original Hebrew. But it's like
that's fine, and it was accurate.
Yeah, well, as accurate as you can be, because there's some things that are not conveyed in Hebrew or in English the way they are in Hebrew.
Man, that sucks for us then, because
Yes,
if everything
no.
about salvation is inaccurately
No,
translated,
no,
then how are we?
no,
Certain words don't have direct translations, so they have to
Yes.
create an approximation to.
If anything, it just means it's more work for us to do what we should be doing, I think, in a daily walk with Christ, and that's to read and learn from all translations, and not. And compare the differences between them, because we as humans are fallible
They all
and we
say a
do
day.
screw
That's
up.
what I mean.
See, but again, you're going back to a literal translation, and I think that can lead to some I think in and of itself, that perspective can lead to contradictory statements within the Bible itself. If you pick one translation and say, this is the only one I read from, and this is infallible.
No, I'm
because there's
saying-
tons of translations
I'm saying every
that have tons
translation
of different
the Bible says
of
that
meanings.
the earth was created in 6 24-hour days.
And I'm saying, okay, you can take that one statement and you can go back to the original Hebrew text of all the different verses in the Bible, and you can derive certain meanings that come from whether it was the way in which the culture was back then, the way in which it was spoken verbatim, or the way in which it was written or conveyed, because even the biblical text themselves comes from different texts. They're not all from
Well, they have
one
different authors,
particular,
yeah.
different authors, different time
right.
periods over
Yeah.
hundreds of thousands of years, and yet, not hundreds of thousands, hundreds or thousands of years,
Yeah.
but it's like in all of these instances, you have the God-breathed out word that is the Holy Bible,
Right.
but it is told through fallible human beings. And that doesn't mean the Bible is wrong.
Yeah, I was going to say the Bible's not fallible.
No, but you can't also sit there and tell me, well, this is the NIV and everything in it is absolutely 100%
No, the
true.
the NIV's not good.
Or the ESV, whatever English translation, because there's some things in English that are not conveyed unless you do know the Hebrew text, which is where I'll go to church. I'll study for myself if again, as I should be, more learned or hopefully, want to do as a good and faithful servant to strengthen my faith so that when I'm presented with certain arguments like these, I have a better case or better evidence. Simple as that.
Okay.
And that's how we didn't study.
Hey, we didn't study the Bible. Obviously, to have I guess a more educated discussion on this issue.
It was fun. I enjoyed it.
I did too. That was fun. Alrighty, guys. That's going to do it for this episode of the Red Moon Podcast. Thank you all so much for tuning in and watching. We appreciate all of your comments. If you did comment tonight, if you didn't, like, share, subscribe right there at the bottom of your screen. Red Moon Book, Red Moon Tweet, Red Moon Picks, and search for Red Moon Productions on YouTube. Don't do it yet. I know he's getting ready.
I'm waiting.
And, of course, you can email us at rmpodcast@redmoonproductions.com. There you go. Alrighty, that's going to do it for this week's episode. Thank you all for tuning in. Next week, we're going to be reviewing Coda. Yeah. Sean's face. He was like, really? It's one of the best picture noms.
I know.
Oh,
We're getting closer.
The Oscars, they air.
It's Apple.
We have one more show next week. We're going to give our picks of what we think will win and what we
Yeah.
hope to win.
That's why we were
That's
doing
next
Coda,
week's show.
because we didn't have a major release, and after next week is the Oscars.
Is the actual
so
Oscars.
We just figured, yeah.
So we got to give our picks of what we hope and what we think will win next week. That's all coming up on our pre-Oscar show. So until next time, I'm one of your hosts, Brandon Davidson, alongside our normal new host,
Sean Sebastian.
And
Show me the money.
is that all of them?
No, but
We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. For more reviews, previous podcast shows, and everything Red Moon, visit our website, redmoonproductions.com. You can also like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter by searching for Red Moon Productions, LLC. We'll see you at the movies.